we tend in a pre-theoretical way to have the idea that words are, as you said, transparent, quoting Russell, and that we can just apply them. We just name our experiences and our social relations. But in fact, when we begin to investigate, what I think we find is that those forms of experience, those forms of social relation that we regard as characteristically human would be impossible without language. That language really is what distinguishes us more than anything else from other forms of animal life. I'll give you a couple of examples. Wittgenstein gave a very simple example to illustrate this about experience. It might seem obvious that our experiences just come to us independently of any language. But what Wittgenstein pointed out was a great many of our experiences would be impossible without language. And he gives this example. He draws a triangle, and he says, now see this as apex and that as base. And then he says, now see that as apex and that as base. And you'll find you have a different experience. I mean, it's just, I've named two different experiences that you can have. But the interesting thing is they're not experiences my dog can have. Not because he hasn't got the optical apparatus, but because he hasn't got the conceptual apparatus. The words, one wants to say, are part of the experience. Now, that's a trivial example, and one could give lots of more grand examples. I mean, let's take the following. La Rochefoucauld said, I forget where, that very few people would fall in love if they never read about it. And I think there is a real underlying truth in that, and that is that categories like love and hate themselves influence the experiences, that our concepts determine or at least shape our experiences, that it would be impossible to have the experiences that we have without the linguistic categories we have.
In other words, our experience of the world doesn't consist of the world as a lot of independent objects to which we as human beings then attach the labels of names, i.e. words. What you're saying is the objects don't exist separately from the words, that the words enter into the very structure of our experience.
Yes, now let me see if I can say what I think you're driving at. It would be this: not that language makes the world. That's the kind of subjectivism that I wouldn't want to accept, but rather something like this. What counts as an object, what counts as reality, is a function of the system of representation that we bring to bear on reality, namely language. So the world doesn't come to us all sliced up into objects and experiences. What counts as this object, or the same object, or as a book, or a table, or a glass, that is a matter of the categories that we impose on the world, and those are linguistic.
Would you say that this is true of, say, an everyday object? Now, I'm holding here a glass of water, and I'm having the simple experience of seeing a glass of water. Now, for me to have the experience of seeing a glass of water, it's not enough for me simply to be having certain visual data. I've also got to have the concept glass and the concept water.
Precisely.
And I've got to be able to locate this experience as coming under that concept. And therefore I couldn't have the experience of seeing a glass of water without some linguistic equipment.
That's the point I'm making, precisely that.
Yeah. And therefore the language that we have helps to create the very categories in which we experience the world, the very categories in which we see objects, has language built into them. This is what you're saying.
It's precisely that.
Yes. Therefore, by investigations in the philosophy of language, we are investigating the very structure of experience.
Yes, yes.
And the structure of whole ways of life and ways of viewing the world and so on.
And indeed, that was one of Wittgenstein's great themes, was the idea that a language is a form of life, and that we should think of language as interpenetrating with our life, not as something that stands outside it and pictures it, as he once thought.